I'm Dolan Perkins-Valdez, and I'm a historical fiction writer. When I'm not writing, I'm teaching. When I'm not teaching, I'm playing with my kids. But the place I love to be the most is in the library. I love to read historical fiction. It just transports me. So I decided to start this book club. Here together, we will read stories featuring women's histories. We'll talk to writers, we'll have discussions. It'll be fun. Come on and join us. Hi. Okay.
Hi.
Move that and, oh, you were already on the top. I'm gonna put you back on the top. Hi, Shabnam. It's so nice to meet you. Welcome to our book club.
Hi, Dolan. It's nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, as I was mentioning here right before we went live, y'all, I read this book, Shabnam Khan's The Jinn Waits 100 Years, and I literally did not want to exit this world. It was like you had a hold of me. It was like, really, it was like I was in a dream. That's really the best way I can say.
I mean, and that's the best compliment you can give, so thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read a little bit because I know some of y'all are new to this author, and I want to read just a little bit about her. She's tuning in today, y'all, all the way from South Africa, and it's evening there. What time is it there?
6 p.m.
6
just
p.m.
about.
Okay, so it's, and are you in Joburg or?
I'm in Durban, so I'm on the East Coast.
You in Durban? Yeah. Okay, just like the book. Okay,
just like the book.
So let me just tell y'all a little bit about her. Shabnam is a South African author and artist. This is her US and UK debut. described as a sweeping literary Gothic coming of age novel set on the east coast of South Africa. It received starred reviews from Kirkus. Y'all know how hard it is to get a star from Kirkus, okay? Library Journal, and was also selected as a New York Times Book Review editor's pick. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, McSweeney's Quarterly, Concern, HuffPost, Oh, the Oprah Magazine, the Sunday Times, New Contrast, and Saraba Magazine. She has a degree in media studies and a master's in English from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She is a writing fellow at OMI's Ledig House in New York, the Swatch Art Peace Hotel in Shanghai, and she is an Octavia Butler Fellow at Jack Jones Literary Arts. She was shortlisted for the Miles Moreland Writing Scholarship for African Writers and selected as a Mellon Fellow at Stellenbosch University in 2019. Y'all forgive me if I've mispronounced anything. When she is not traveling, she lives in Durban, where the warmest waters meet the bluest skies. What a lovely way to end your bio. I've never been to South Africa, and so that warmest water meets the bluest sky. It sounds lovely.
Well, you should come.
I know. I'm coming. I'm going to come one day. It's a dream.
You have to. You have to.
No,
It's really.
I have to. So let's just dive right into it. Y'all, as usual, we're going to talk for about 20 minutes. I want to welcome my book club members and also my book club visitors who are tuning in today on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. If you are unable to see this video on one of those, you can catch it on another one. Just do a little search and it's on my YouTube channel for everybody to see. Tell us about, this is your debut novel, and I'm just curious, like, how it came to be, how long it took you to write it, and how you got the idea for it. I know that's a lot, but yeah.
Well, it's my debut novel in the US and the UK. So I did have another novel in South Africa like 13 years ago, but it never released internationally. And so I was working on this novel for like 9 years. And I think I really just wanted to write a novel about love, Dolan. And I think I realized you can't write a love story without writing a life story. And so it really just became about this a really small house in my mind over the years kept growing into like this huge house, and then it went on a cliff along the ocean, and then I started filling characters into the rooms, and it just became this really long way of telling a story about love and what does love mean for all the characters in this novel. And I think it's so hard to answer this question because it was such a long period of time. And I just kept throwing things that I liked at the house. I was like, I want to talk about grief. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about sadness. I want to talk about joy. And I kind of just like pushed it into the novel. And then I was like, let me think of a plot now to put this all together. And so really it just came out of wanting to explore the idea of love.
And so, but the setting is this large, beautiful, almost sort of like castle. The book is very Gothic in its mood, but it's this large castle on the coast of Durban. And so I'm curious about how you came up with the setting to explore this theme of love.
Well, I mean, I think I really wanted to write a novel set in Durban because in South Africa, we don't get many novels set in Durban. People mainly know about Johannesburg, they know about Cape Town, but we don't really talk about Durban. It's like the underdog city. It's just we have so many problems here. There's like a lot of government problems. We had huge floods that like hit the city. We had riots, and it kind of like people. It's like a city that always tries to do great things but never seems to achieve it. And so I thought, as a writer here, I owe to write about this place because I've lived here my whole life. For some reason or the other, I'm stuck here, and I need to write about this place. So it was important that I write about this city. And then also in relation to the ocean, because the ocean here is special. You said in my bio that it's the warmest, I even forget, but the warmest water meets the bluest skies. And it's true. There's something special about Durban. Like the water is really warm. So we've got the Indian Ocean, whereas like the other half of South Africa, you have the Atlantic Ocean. So the water is really cold. There's a place between the continent, right at the center of the continent, where the two oceans meet. So the Atlantic and the Indian meet, and the fish from here won't swim into that ocean. They'll actually like separate. And so the Indian Ocean, I think, is really special because it's warm, and we have the warm Mozambique current along the Durban East Coast. So it's a really warm ocean, and it's a very lush tropical place. And I just felt as a writer, like I need to write about the ocean here. I need to write about the place here, and the city here is filled with a lot of houses that had great ambitions, like many of the people, but it seems to have worn away with time. The green is always trying to overtake the city, the plants. So a lot of the buildings are like breaking down, they're wearing away. So I think if you sit in the city long enough, you would want to write almost like a gothic novel about the buildings that are breaking down, about the city that is so beautiful but also so not maintained, and so that's why I wanted to write about this place, yeah, in this setting.
And so, you know, you really tap into the belief, I should say, and I call it a belief because it's also sort of what I believe, and that is that the veil between this life and the next is a thin one. I mean, there's one moment where she says, where one of the main characters, Sana, says to her sister who is dead, she says, "You're dead." And her sister replies something like, "Oh, you misunderstand." I can't remember what the line was, but basically, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, you
You
think
don't
it,
understand.
yeah, you don't understand. You think it's that simple, right? Like, there's not
Yeah.
just life or death, right?" And I'm
Mhm.
curious about your use of I don't know what word I like these days. I don't know if I like the word magic. I don't know if I like the word non-realism, but I'm
Yeah.
curious about the spirit world and how
Yeah.
it works for you and how it works for the book.
Yeah, I mean that's such an interesting question, and I think about it too. Like I'm not sure. I never thought of myself as like a. Sometimes it's put under magic realism, and like
Yeah.
I never saw myself as a writer like that. My first novel in South Africa was very much a realistic novel about an Indian family, three generations of women living their day-to-day lives and how difficult it was for them. So I didn't think I'd write something like a little bit magical with like dead sisters and jinns haunting the place. But I also think like inevitably as life goes on, there is something that you start to explore in your writing because that is life. Like I really feel like if if you are open to experiencing life, life will show you magical things can happen, mysterious things can happen, unanswerable things can happen. And it can be that sometimes you're grieving for someone so much that it feels like they're alive there with you, you can hear them coughing in the other room. And so um inevitably I think my writing had to go that way. I didn't intend it to, but I also think if you're surrounded by culture, I come from a family that talks about jinns. I come from a family where the cousins would get together as children and be like, "Oh, did you see the ghost? Did you see this?" And I have a very cultural setting. Durban is a very cultural place. This It's one of the largest Indian populations outside of India, and there's a lot of like the older generations who try to hold on to that culture that they've left behind. So they make you do certain cultural traditions, make certain foods and celebrations, talk about our family that came from India on the ship. And I think when you're surrounded by that, by those kind of stories and by the kind of history about religion and about jinns and about um, what the prophets used to do in the Quran, and like Moses on the ship and all these kind of stories, I think inevitably it has to come out in your writing somewhere, like that kind of magical story, not even magical, but like powerful storytelling and this otherworldliness. It seeps into your own world, even whether you want it to or not, whether you're trying to write a realistic novel or not. Those things have to come in, I think, especially if you come from very like traditional cultural
Mhm.
Eastern backgrounds. Like it has to. And And I mean, I'm South African and I'm Indian, so it has to come out. It just has to.
Well, and you do such a good job of really capturing sort of the betweenness of that and how that works for your characters, not only in terms of just space. I mean, you really get a sense of like how far away India is from where they are with the, with the, I guess it was like a 2 month ship ride or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
also just like some of the women in the house are really trying to hold on to those old traditions, like Razia Bibi, and her like a woman is supposed to cook, not a man. The job, like this sort of holding fast, and even the Grand Ami in the past, present, in the past storyline. Is very much about like the old tradition that you don't marry a Tamil woman, those sorts of things.
yeah.
But with this newer generation, really her son, I mean, it's 1930. He's not even like, the new generation the way we think, but with her son wanting to depart from those kinds of traditions, I thought you did a fantastic job of like capturing the pull and tug.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's something I always want to explore in my writing, like how, like, and also that it's not very different. Like you just brought it up, like Randami and Razia Bibi are generations apart, and yet they have the same thinking.
Yes.
Sometimes you think things have changed a lot, but they're still pretty much the same. And then
Mhm.
also things have changed a lot, like, doors have opened up, there's opportunities, but
Mhm.
it's a tricky balance to try to show it in writing. But I mean, I think I'm always interested in exploring how the different generations approach traditional roles for women, and like how and what does that mean for society. And so like similarly in my first novel, I have a grandmother who is like very strict with tradition, and she considers herself Indian no matter that she came to South Africa. And then her daughter, the next generation, is like, I'm South African, I'm not Indian, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then you have a daughter who's like trying to find her identity between these very two strong, polarizing identities.
Mhm.
So I think I'm just always interested in how different generations see their identity and bring in their traditions and their cultures, and how that gets passed on to the next generation. Yeah.
You know, so fascinating. I'm just loving this conversation. We are a historical fiction book club. That's what we read. And you've written a book that is a little bit more contemporary than historical. I mean, actually, no, let me rephrase that. Just because fewer of the chapters happen in the historical timeline doesn't mean it's less historical. You have these lines that I promise you, Shabnam, when the next time I give a talk, I'm going to quote you. I'm going to give you credit because you have these lines that I thought were just brilliant. You said, she realizes then a memory can make you whole. Can you talk about how you feel memories can make us whole? And wait, there was one more, which I probably didn't mark, um, but it has to also do with the role of history and memory in our lives. But I'll look for that while you tell me about this. How can a memory make us whole?
I think when I was thinking about that scene, I was thinking, about home. There's this idea of home in the novel, like what is home? And I feel like home is something that changes all the time in different stages of your life. Like maybe home for me was my family before, but now at the stage in my life that I am now, like home is more where I can feel most myself, like I can feel free to be myself. And I'm sure that will change as time goes by as well. Like home changes. And so I think a lot about memory, and I write a lot about memory in the novel. And I think, like, I even said home could be a memory because you keep returning to this one memory where you feel safe, and that could be home. And I think sometimes when you remember something, it takes you back to who you were at a certain point, when you were most you, and you were most whole, and returning, even if you're I don't know if this is going to make sense, but even if you're like a broken person at this point that you're remembering it, going to that memory and remembering a time when you were, I don't know, just a moment, even you were true to yourself, or you made the right decision, or you felt very safe and loved, or very joyful, a good moment. And you can go to that moment and become that again. And so I
Yeah.
think that for me was a memory can make you whole, because then it's somewhere you can return to and put yourself back together and see who you are, what you want to be, or where you felt the most joy.
Mhm.
And there's something special in that. I mean, I also know a memory can break you, but I also know a memory can make you whole, you know? So it just depends where you're traveling back to. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that because we often talk about how memories break us, but we don't talk about the other, which is what you're suggesting here.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Exactly.
I want to just tell everybody to go ahead and put your comments and questions in the chat. We've got a lot of different media platforms going on here, and I'm trying to keep track of it. So I want you to go ahead and put your questions in, and I'm going to try to ask Shubnam anything you want to know. You have another, I found the other quote I was looking for. The
Mm.
reopening of history like fingers digging into a wound. This is the moment. So in the book, Sana, who's a young girl, opens this room. She finds a key. She opens this room that has been locked for decades. And the moment she opens that room, the jinn begins to sort of guide her into the secrets of the past. And I'm really curious about this line, just generally, what it means for us to open the secrets of the past in families or otherwise.
I think I'm always so a lot of writing this book was also to talk about what happens to things that are forgotten. Like, I'm always curious to know if two people love each other and then the love disappears. What happens to that intense love? Like, it just becomes nothing. I can't understand. Or, you have a prized possession, and then over time it's no longer your prized possession. It rolls underneath a couch and you forget about it. And so I'm so curious to know about what happens to forgotten things. And I do believe, and it's also what I try to express in the book, is that nothing is forgotten. No matter how forgotten something feels, there'll always be a trace of its memory somewhere. And so inevitably this room that has been locked has to be opened, because nothing can stay hidden. Like, I believe that. Like, I believe nothing will ever stay hidden. No secret will ever not come out. Even if it's 100 years later, secrets will be, this is why I'm very bad at like keeping I mean, at telling lies, because I always feel like it will be exposed. It has to,
Yeah.
like, that's just the way the universe works.
Yeah.
Inevitably, if there was this house with a room that was locked, that room is going to be unlocked, and the truth is going to come out, even when it seemingly doesn't matter at all, because the characters of that timeline have died and are dead. So that's, I think, what it was, like fingers digging into the wound. I said, it's, you think something is forgotten, you think a memory is forgotten, and you think a sadness or grief or something, but it just takes like the right key and it opens
Mm.
up, and
The
you're
right
there,
key and the right person.
the right key and the right person, and then you're there facing it again, and you have to face things. And so I think the room is like a metaphor for like facing your demons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sana is, I people always ask me about like my main characters, and I'm like, they're all me. They're all me. Because Sana, most writers who I know, and I don't know if you're different, Shabnam, but most writers I know were the kids that were opening the locked doors. We were the ones asking all the questions. We were the ones like asking our grandma, well, why do you think women only cook and men can't cook? Like the writers in the family are typically the people who ask those questions. and
Yeah.
and they and they know we're different as I mean, like every writer I know was like that child, right? Who was asking questions that really was like not considered children's business.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about The Jinn Waits 100 Years by Shubnam Khan. Shubnam is here joining us all the way from Durban, South Africa. This is a treat. If you have not read this book, please, please, I really want to say, read it. It's so one of my readers said that you reminded them of Isabel Allende, that this book. Who are some of your influences? I mean, if there's any like one of the things I love about talking to international writers is y'all can turn me on to new voices that I don't know because, we're living in the US publishing bubble. But are there any writers who you adore that you want to recommend to us?
I've heard this Isabel Allende description before as well. I will say that I'm quite influenced, I think, by Arundhati Roy.
Mhm.
So, she wrote The God of Small Things, which won the Booker in 1997. And then she wrote The Ministry of Utmost Happiness like a few years ago after many years of taking a break from writing fiction. And I really love, like, I don't know, when I read her the first time, I must have been like 22, I think. And I just showed me what you can do with writing. Like, I was like, wow, you can really create an entire language, an entire world, and you can play with language. Like, that's when I learned, like, you can play around. You don't. It doesn't have to be this formal English that I was taught. We were taught very much in South Africa with like British English, reading Shakespeare and reading like a novel is this. And really, what she showed me with her book was like a novel can be many things, and you can play around as long as you're taking the reader along with you on this journey and showing them that you're playing around and you're trying to create a world and you're stringing up a whole world out of a language, it's fine. And so I feel like I was really influenced and I really admire her writing.
Mhm.
Um, I have heard that this book has like undertones of Mexican Gothic as well, but which I think is popular in the US. So that is probably that's I mean that's a hugely popular book in the US. So that's not a different recommendation. There's also a book called Intruders by Mohale Mashigo, which is about ordinary South Africans who become just like these strange, almost like it's a science fiction, they become these strange characters doing extraordinary things. And I think it plays with a new kind of genre in South Africa, which is interesting for me. So those are maybe writers you haven't heard of in the US.
Okay.
And yeah, what
So
who influenced.
I have a reader question, Shabnam. Someone wants to know if you are multilingual. I know in the book, Mina, who is the second wife of the landowner Akbar, she's Tamil and she speaks Urdu and she teaches herself English really, and
Yeah.
she's very very smart. I love her as a character. Are you multilingual?
Not really. I wish I was. I mean, a little bit. So I speak a little bit of Urdu. My family speak Urdu. Um, we were taught Afrikaans in school. I don't know why, but we know Afrikaans. It does not serve me in any way.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people speak Zulu here, and so I speak a little bit of Zulu, but not enough to be multilingual, sadly. But I
Okay.
have a book right next to my bedside, which is How to Learn Urdu. So I'm trying to improve.
I love that. It's never too late.
Yeah.
Let's see, other question here. Someone said, when we go to that moment of home, that moment that a memory can make you whole. In Rolfing structural integration, I don't know what that is. It sounds like a psychological phrase. Tell me, Luca, what that means. We call that resourcing ourselves. I love to help people resource themselves to find that place where they once felt whole, even if they don't in that moment. So it sounds like what we're talking about is some kind of technique used in
Yeah.
helping people in
I
therapy.
mean, I love that resourcing yourself. Yeah, you're like finding a resource to be yourself, to pull yourself together in a way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
love.
That's why, y'all, that's why therapy is a good thing. We can figure out how to do these things. Tell me about, let's talk a little, because we've been talking a little bit generally about history and culture, et cetera. I want to just go look right into the book. So, I always say, y'all, this is two writers talking, so we have to talk a little bit of shop. Forgive us. I want to know about the structure of the book. So, it's in three parts, right? So it's like sort of like a three-act play. I love books in three parts. And you don't go into the past until like, I don't know, 100 pages in almost. We don't, yeah, we
Mm.
get into Akbar on page 89, which is the beginning of part two.
Yeah.
Tell me how you made decisions about, I'm going to put all of part one in Sana. It's like sort of staying with Sana for 90 pages. And then when the time is right, I'm going to gently take the reader back to the summer of 1919.
I mean, Dolan, it wasn't easy. I'm not going to say I had a very clear idea of the structure. I think it's very clear that I for me, I think it's very clear that I was all over the place and I really needed help to put the structure together. And so that's why we have parts, because I needed to figure out when is the past going to come in. And everyone who read it before it could even be sold or shopped or anything was like, the past needs to come sooner. So the past was even further back. Akbar
Okay.
and second timeline, Akbar and Meena and all that was happening further in the book. And they were like, no, this is the interesting part. You need to bring it earlier, like bring it earlier. So it must have been coming in at like halfway. Now it comes in more like at the first quarter. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think that helped it read a lot better because it was much slower. We were in the present for a bit too long, and we needed to get into the past pretty quickly. Um, and and then it became pretty easy to, I was almost like alternating it between past and present, past and present, past and present, giving you little glimpses of each timeline.
Mhm.
And I mean, the past flowed pretty quickly, you know. The past had a strong plot and was, I think that carried the second half of the book pretty quickly. It was
Mhm.
just the beginning stages when we were like settling into the world of Sana and the house and the characters, which
Mhm.
I think took a bit of time. But honestly, I wish I was a writer who could structure better. And that's like my plan, hopefully, for my
Well,
next novel.
you know what? I think all writers. I mean, I don't know if readers understand just how much carpentry is involved in putting a book
And when
together.
there's two timelines and there's a plot, and like, you need help. I was like, my editor and my agent were great. They were like, they helped me because I was like, I'm juggling two timelines here. I needed to flow, like, help me.
Yeah.
And I think we did it fine, but I will say it
I
wasn't
love
easy.
it. I love how y'all did it because for the first 90 pages, I really got deeply invested with Sana, and because she's
Oh,
a
I'm glad.
quieter character, I think that was important.
I'm happy to hear that though, because I've heard people say like, oh, the first few pages are a bit slow, but then it starts like getting going. So I'm really glad to hear that.
And the other thing I will say that is so outstanding about this book are the characters. I mean, they're so distinct and memorable, and I love like women with personalities,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
like Pinky talks about herself in the third person, and Razia Bibi is just you know I don't even know how to describe her. And then Zulika and her cigarettes.
Yeah, yeah. I just love an interesting female character
Me
who can like,
too.
they're the best in real life and they're the best to write in fiction and they're just fun and and I've been surrounded by so many female characters like that in my life. My mother had six older sisters. I have three
Oh,
older sisters. So I'm
wow.
surrounded by like women who are talking. So I know how they fight. I know how they love each another. I know how they gossip or get together and try to cook a meal together. Like, and I love it, and I think it's so special, and I try to capture it in my books when I write. Yeah,
Yes. My mother was one of five, is one of five. My mother's still alive, one of five sisters. So I get that. And when they're together, oh my God, it's a riot.
yeah. I mean, it's
Okay,
crazy when they cook together. It's crazy.
I bet. Great cooking scenes here, by the way. Okay, let's see. More questions, you guys. We only have a couple more minutes. Just trying to see if there are any more questions. What is your process for getting help when your book is confusing you?
I mean, I a lot to step away from the book. Sometimes I needed a break. I mean, sometimes when I took a break from the book for like a few months and then I came back to it, I could see it again because sometimes you're so deep in the book, you don't know what's going on, and I don't know, like, and then you think you have to finish it and you have to know what's going on. I think like there's like we don't talk enough about the the importance of patience when writing. Like we're really impatient with ourselves and about, we live in an age of production where you have to produce as much as possible and it's encouraged. But I do think like something special happens in the waiting part also and in the figuring out part also and in the building part. Like it frustrated me a lot that this book took like 8, 9 years to write. But I do think, and I recognize now that the special parts are parts that took time to put together, and I got to know my characters properly, and I got to put the story, stitch it together bit by bit, like properly. So when it's confusing you, I think take a break from it. Like if you're working on it for a long time, take a break, and also get someone you trust to read it and give you their feedback also, because that's really important as well. And also, I think read a lot while you're waiting and taking a break from the other book, from your book, because you'll automatically start looking at the structure of things in other books that you're reading, and sort of thinking of your own structure and putting it together slowly bit by bit, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I used to be so scared to show people my horrible drafts. But now I'm just like grateful that somebody will even read my horrible draft. I'm like, here, read this, help me fix it. So that's really important for beginning writers, I think, to know that like it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, to let somebody else read.
And we all get confused sometimes along the way.
Oh, yeah. Me multiple times, all the time. Okay. Let's see if there are other questions. If anybody on Instagram or YouTube has a question, I'm happy to ask our author. We only have a couple more minutes. I see people in the rooms, but I don't see questions. Let me ask you, what are you working on? Are you working? I mean, I hope the next book doesn't take 8 or 9 years, Shabnam. What do we have to do to get more from you?
I hope so too, Dolan. I don't know. I'm waiting for like a very particular idea to strike me for a novel. But I do have a nonfiction project in the works. Like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it too much in case I jinx it. But
Yeah, I understand.
It's a nonfiction idea. Yeah,
A memoir?
Kind of, yeah, kind of like a memoir, kind of, but not exactly. It's hard. It's so hard to explain. I'm trying to write the proposal and I'm struggling.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for joining today. I want to put her book up one more time. Some people are going to catch this broadcast later. If you catch it later, I just want to say, look at that cover. How did they do? I guess I should ask you about the cover. I always ask about the cover. It's a beautiful cover. I'm going to show y'all something. This is something I love to do with my hardcovers, y'all. I love to take off the cover. And look at that. That fuchsia and that red is so beautiful.
So beautiful.
Tell us how they came up with that cover art.
It was just the magicians at Viking. Like that was the first cover they came up. I think that was the first cover they came up with, and everyone just loved it. And it was, and also you don't know if it's the main character Mina on the cover. You don't know if it's a jinn, because the jinn turns into Mina when it's grieving. So you don't even know if you're looking at the jinn or you're looking at Mina on the cover, which I love. Like, there's something magical about that secret on the cover. And also there's a shadow on the cover. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen the like a shadow on the dress?
Up here in the blue or down?
No,
Oh,
yeah.
I see it with hands.
Yeah, it's like two hands, because the jinn. Yeah, so I mean they were just great, and they've loved that cover so much that we're keeping it for the paperback as well. Yeah,
I'm so glad y'all are keeping it, because it stands out. I mean, if you go in a bookstore, this stands out. I love it.
Yeah, I think so. I love it.
Well, thank you, Shabnam, for joining and spending your Saturday evening with us. This has been such a delight.
No, thank you so much for having me. You are a delight.
Well, I hope if you come back to the U.S., come to Washington, D.C., and I will host you here at one of the bookstores. We'd love to have you. Put us on your tour.
I definitely, for sure.
Yeah,
you're just wonderful.
Just reach out to me, and I would love to, do some kind of in-person conversation.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Yeah, and I'm coming to Durban.
Good. You can come and dip your toe in the ocean and come and see the blue skies as well.
Oh, wouldn't that be lovely? Wow. Okay, I'm gonna make that happen before too long. Thank you again, and thank you to everybody who joined us on all the social medias. This is Dolan's Book Club here with Shabnam Khan, author of The Jinn Waits 100 Years. Thank you.